The sound of silk hitting hardwood should have been softer. But when Lyra let her robe drop in our bedroom doorway, the whisper of fabric seemed to echo through 20 years of marriage like a gunshot. She stood there in black lingerie I'd never seen before, her smile sharp as winter glass. "I decided to try something new tonight," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when announcing redecorating plans or charity galas. Matter of fact, final. "I invited your brother. Whether you like it or not, tonight I'll be with him." I sat on the edge of our bed, still in my work clothes from the security consulting firm I'd built from nothing after leaving the Army Corps of Engineers. The irony wasn't lost on me that I made my living protecting other people's assets while my own marriage crumbled in real time. "This isn't a discussion, Rowan," Lyra continued, adjusting the strap of her bra with the same casual precision she used to arrange flowers. "Trent understands what I need, what we both need. 20 years, 2 decades of building something I thought was solid, only to discover the foundation had been rotting underneath. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing Lyra's face. The woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal fries from my plate had been replaced by someone calculating and cold. "When?" I asked quietly. "He's driving up from Boston now. Should be here by 8. She glanced at her phone, a gesture so casual it felt rehearsed. "I thought you should know." The master bedroom of our Gloucester estate suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in despite its cathedral ceiling and panoramic view of the Atlantic. This house had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather had built it with shipping money. My father had maintained it through the lean years, and I'd renovated it room by room with my own hands and the profits from Carrick Security Solutions. "I see," I said, standing slowly. My knees felt stiff, like I'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Lyra's expression softened slightly, but not with affection, with pity. "You're a good man, Rowan. But good isn't enough anymore. Trent has vision, ambition. He's going places." My brother, Trent, the golden boy who'd parlayed his Harvard MBA into a hedge fund empire while I'd been crawling through Afghan caves with demolition charges. Trent, who'd always looked at everything I had with hungry eyes, including, apparently, my wife. "How long?" I asked. "How long what? How long have you been planning this?" Lyra tilted her head, considering. "Planning is such a harsh word. Things evolve, Rowan. People grow. Needs change." She wasn't answering the question, which was answer enough. I walked past her toward the hallway, catching a whiff of expensive perfume I didn't recognize. Even her scent had become foreign. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "Downstairs." "Rowan." Her voice carried a warning now. "Don't make this difficult. Don't make a scene." I paused at the top of the staircase, my hand gripping the mahogany banister my great-grandfather had carved by hand. "Have I ever made a scene, Lyra?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. The house felt different as I walked through it. Every room held memories that suddenly seemed fragile, like soap bubbles about to burst. The kitchen where we'd shared morning coffee for 2 decades, the living room where we'd watched Sophie take her first steps 13 years ago, the study where I'd proposed to Lyra on Christmas Eve 2003, both of us young and stupid and convinced we'd found forever. Sophie. Our daughter was at her friend Madison's house for a sleepover, probably talking about boys and homework and all the normal 13-year-old concerns that seemed impossibly innocent now. At least she wouldn't witness whatever was about to happen. I made my way to the study and opened the wall safe behind my father's portrait. The combination hadn't changed in 20 years, Sophie's birthday. Inside, among the insurance papers and property deeds, I found what I was looking for. The power of attorney document Lyra had insisted I sign 5 years ago. "It's just for convenience," she'd said then, "in case something happens to you. I need to be able to handle the finances, the trust distributions, all of it. You travel so much for work." She'd been right about the travel. Building a security consulting business meant long hours and longer trips, designing systems for corporate clients from Maine to Virginia. I'd trusted her to handle the household finances, the social obligations, the 1,000 details that kept our life running smoothly. Trust. The word tasted bitter now. I spread the power of attorney document on my desk and read through it carefully. Still active, still legally binding, still giving Lyra broad authority over our joint assets. But here was the thing about legal documents that most people didn't understand. They worked both ways. My phone buzzed with a text from Lyra. Trent's ETA is 7:45. Please don't be here when he arrives. I glanced at the grandfather clock in the corner. 7:15, 30 minutes. Instead of responding to her text, I opened my contacts and found a different number. James Morrison, administrator for the Carrick Family Trust. A man who'd known my family for 30 years and understood exactly how these things worked. Jim, it's Rowan. I need to invoke the Emergency Provisions Clause, suspend all discretionary payouts pending review, effective immediately. Rowan? Jim's voice carried concern. Is everything all right? Family emergency. I'll have documentation to you first thing Monday morning. Can you also flag any attempted policy changes with the insurance carrier? Of course. The suspension will be in effect within the hour. Thank you. My next call was to David Chen, my attorney. David had handled the family's legal affairs since my father's passing, and he understood the intricacies of old New England money better than most. David, I need you to prepare separation papers. Irreconcilable differences. I'll have supporting documentation Monday morning, but I want everything ready to file. Rowan, this is sudden. Are you sure you don't want to? I'm sure. Also, review the trust provisions regarding beneficiary removal for cause. I think we may need to invoke those protections. I'll have everything ready. Are you safe? Physically? Yes. In every other way? We'll see. I hung up and opened my laptop, accessing the security system I'd installed throughout the house. Cameras in every common area, motion sensors on all the doors, digital logs of every entry and exit. The system I'd designed to protect my family was about to become evidence in its destruction. The front gate camera showed Trent's silver Porsche pulling into the circular drive, right on time. My brother stepped out wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month, his hair perfectly styled, his smile confident. He looked like a man who'd never doubted he deserved whatever he wanted. Lyra appeared in the front hall camera feed, now wearing a black dress that hugged every curve. She'd changed out of the lingerie, probably saving that for later. The thought should have hurt more than it did. I watched them embrace through the security monitor. Not the polite hug of in-laws, but something intimate and familiar, practiced. This wasn't their first time. My phone buzzed again, another text from Lyra. Your car is still in the driveway. I typed back, leaving now. But I didn't leave. Instead, I sat in my study and watched my marriage end in real time through a security system I'd installed to protect what I thought was mine. The cameras captured everything. Trent's confident swagger as he toured the house he'd coveted since childhood, Lyra's animated gestures as she played hostess, their easy intimacy that spoke of long familiarity. At 8:30, my phone rang. Lyra, your car is still here. I'm in the garage. Rowan, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. How long, Lyra? A pause. What? How long have you and Trent been together? Another pause, longer this time. That's not important now. It is to me. 6 months, she said finally. Maybe 7. I see. Rowan. I hung up. 6 months. While I'd been working 18-hour days to secure a contract with a Fortune 500 company, my wife had been securing my brother. While I'd been traveling to client sites across New England, they'd been planning this moment. While I'd been building our future, they'd been destroying it. The house felt like a mausoleum now, full of the ghosts of better times. I could hear their laughter echoing from the living room, the sound sharp and foreign in spaces that had once held warmth. They were drinking wine, my wine, from the cellar I'd spent years curating, and celebrating the end of everything I'd built. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Jim Morrison, confirming the trust suspension. All discretionary payouts frozen. All policy changes flagged. The financial fortress I'd built around my family was now protecting only me. Another notification. David Chen, confirming he'd begun drafting the separation papers. The legal machinery was in motion, grinding forward with the inexorable weight of documentation and precedent. I forwarded the security footage to David, time-stamped evidence of Trent's presence in my home, of their intimate behavior, of the casual way they'd invaded the space I'd worked 20 years to build. The cameras captured everything in high definition, every touch, every whispered conversation, every moment that would become evidence in the dissolution of the Carrick marriage. At 9:15, I finally left the house. Not because Lyra had asked, but because I'd seen enough. The security system would continue recording, building a digital record of their betrayal while I drove through the winding streets of Gloucester, past the harbor where fishing boats bobbed in the darkness, past the tourist shops that would soon close for the winter, past the life I'd thought was mine. I ended up at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar near the waterfront where nobody knew my name or cared about my problems. The bartender, a weathered man named Pete, who looked like he'd seen everything twice, poured me a whiskey without being asked. "Rough night?" he asked. "Rough 20 years," I replied. Pete nodded like that made perfect sense. "Wife?" "Ex-wife, as of tonight." "Kids?" "One. Daughter, she's 13. "That's the hard part," Pete said, refilling my glass. "The kids always pay the price." I thought about Sophie, probably asleep at her friend's house, unaware that her world had shifted on its axis. Tomorrow I'd have to find a way to explain that her mother and uncle had decided to rewrite the family story, with her caught in the middle. My phone buzzed with notifications throughout the night. Texts from Lyra, calls from Trent, voicemails I didn't bother to check. The security system sent alerts every time they moved through the house, a digital heartbeat of betrayal that I watched from my bar stool like a man observing his own autopsy. At midnight, I drove to a hotel near the highway, not because I couldn't go home, it was still my house, my name on the deed, but because I needed distance to think. The Hampton Inn smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams, but the bed was clean, and the walls were thin enough that I could hear other people's lives falling apart in the rooms around me. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. Lyra thought she'd won by making the first play, by forcing the confrontation on her terms. But she'd forgotten something important about her husband. I'd spent 10 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, learning that the best demolitions were planned carefully, executed precisely, and left nothing standing. The sun was rising over Gloucester Harbor when I finally fell asleep, my phone silent beside me on the nightstand. The last text from Lyra had come at 2 a.m. "We need to talk." She was right. We did need to talk, but not the way she thought. When I woke up 6 hours later, the real work would begin. I woke up in the Hampton Inn with the taste of stale whiskey and broken promises in my mouth. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed 6:47 a.m., and pale October sunlight filtered through curtains that had seen better decades. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 32 unread texts, most from Lyra, a few from Trent, and one from Sophie that made my chest tighten. "Dad, why isn't Mom answering her phone? Madison's mom is taking us to breakfast, but I wanted to check in. Love you." I texted back immediately. "Mom's phone might be out of power. Have fun at breakfast. Love you too, kiddo." The lie came easier than it should have. But Sophie deserved better than learning about her parents' marriage through a panicked phone call from a hotel room that smelled like industrial disinfectant and other people's failures. The shower water was lukewarm and the pressure weak, but it helped wash away the fog of sleeplessness and whiskey. As I stood under the tepid spray, I reviewed what I'd set in motion the night before. The trust suspension would hold for 72 hours without additional documentation. The insurance flags would prevent any policy changes for 30 days. David Chen would have preliminary separation papers ready by Monday morning. But those were just the opening moves. Lyra had spent months planning her betrayal. I had the weekend to plan my response. I checked out of the hotel and drove to a diner near the harbor, the kind of place where lobstermen grabbed coffee before dawn, and the waitresses called everyone Han, regardless of age or gender. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, and the eggs came with a side of gossip about whose boat was having engine trouble and which restaurants would close for the winter. Normal problems, manageable problems, the kind of issues that could be solved with money or effort, or both. My phone rang as I was finishing breakfast. David Chen. Rowan, I've been reviewing the trust documents. The emergency suspension you initiated will hold, but Lyra has co-trustee status on several accounts. She could challenge the freeze. How long would that take? If she files Monday morning? A week? Maybe 2? But there's something else. I pulled the insurance policies last night. Someone submitted change requests yesterday afternoon, before your call. I set down my coffee cup carefully. What kind of changes? Beneficiary modifications. The requests were flagged because of the freeze you requested, but the timing is interesting. The submissions came in around 4 p.m. 4 p.m. 3 hours before Lyra had opened her robe and announced her new arrangement. This hadn't been spontaneous. It had been choreographed. David, I need you to pull every financial record for the past year. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, everything. That's going to take time. Bill me for the overtime. I want to know every dollar that moved and where it went. After hanging up with David, I drove back to the house. Trent's Porsche was gone, but Lyra's Mercedes sat in the circular drive like it owned the place, which, legally speaking, it partially did. Community property laws in Massachusetts were complex, but 20 years of marriage created entanglements that couldn't be severed with a single phone call. The front door was unlocked. I found Lyra in the kitchen, wearing yoga pants and one of my old MIT t-shirts, making coffee like nothing had changed. She looked up when I entered, her expression carefully neutral. "Good morning," she said. "Is it?" She poured herself a cup and didn't offer me one. "We need to discuss how this is going to work." "I thought you'd already decided how it was going to work." Lyra sighed, the sound carrying practiced patience. "Rowan, I know you're hurt, but we're adults. We can handle this civilly." Civilly. I tasted the word. "Is that what you call last night?" Last night was honest, maybe the first honest conversation we've had in years. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a bottle of water, mainly to give my hands something to do besides shake. "How long have you been planning this?" Planning makes it sound calculated. "Wasn't it?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Instead, she walked to the kitchen island and spread out a manila folder. "I've been thinking about the practical arrangements. The house, Sophie's custody, the financial accounts." "Have you?" "I think we can work something out that's fair to everyone." I looked at the folder without touching it. "What's your definition of fair?" "Joint custody of Sophie. I keep the house. It makes sense since she's settled here, established at school. You can take the condo in Boston and half the liquid assets." The condo in Boston, a one-bedroom investment property worth maybe $300,000, compared to the Gloucester estate that was worth 10 times that. Half the liquid assets, while the trust funds and business equity remained untouched. "Generous," I said. "I think so." "And if I don't agree?" Her expression hardened slightly. "Then we'll have to do this the difficult way. Lawyers, court battles, Sophie caught in the middle. Is that what you want?" I opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. Custody arrangements that gave Lyra primary residence. Financial settlements that left her with the majority of our assets. visitation schedules that reduced my relationship with my daughter to alternate weekends and Thursday dinners. "You've been busy," I said. "I've been realistic. Have you told Sophie yet? I thought we should do that together. Present a united front." United front. The phrase was almost funny, coming from a woman who'd united with my brother to destroy 20 years of marriage. "Where is she?" "Still at Madison's. They're going shopping this afternoon. I thought it would give us time to work out the details." I closed the folder and looked at my wife. Really looked at her. The woman I'd married had been spontaneous, quick to laugh, generous with affection. This person was calculating, every word measured, every gesture designed to achieve a specific outcome. "When did you become someone I don't recognize?" I asked. For just a moment her mask slipped. I saw something that might have been regret or sadness or just exhaustion. Then it was gone. "People change, Rowan. I changed. You didn't." "I see. Do you? Do you really?" She leaned against the counter, her voice gaining intensity. "When was the last time we went anywhere together? Did anything spontaneous? When was the last time you surprised me? When was the last time you wanted me to?" She didn't answer. "How long with Trent?" I asked again. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She stared into her coffee cup like it held answers. 8 months, maybe 9. Longer than she'd admitted last night. I did the math. 8 months ago, I'd been working on the Brennan Industries contract, the biggest deal in my company's history. 18-hour days, constant travel, coming home exhausted and distracted while my wife and brother built their own private world. "I want you to leave," I said. "This is my house too. Tonight. Pack a bag and leave tonight." "Rowan, you wanted honesty? Here's honesty. I can't stand to look at you right now. I can't stand to be in the same room as you. So pack a bag and go stay with Trent or your sister or wherever you've been planning to go, but don't be here when I get back." Her composure cracked slightly. "You can't just throw me out. Watch me. I have rights. So do I. And right now, I'm exercising my right to not share space with someone who's been planning my humiliation for 8 months." I walked toward the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Lyra, you might want to check your credit cards and your bank accounts and pretty much anything else that requires my signature or consent." Her face went pale. "What did you do?" "I made a phone call. Just one. Turns out that power of attorney you insisted I sign works both ways." I left her standing in the kitchen and drove to my office. Carrick Security Solutions occupied a converted warehouse near Gloucester's industrial district, all exposed brick and polished concrete floors. I designed it myself, creating a space that was both functional and impressive enough to reassure corporate clients that their security needs were in capable hands. My assistant, Jennifer Walsh, looked up from her desk with surprise. "Boss? I wasn't expecting you today." "Neither was I. Can you pull the Morrison Industries file? I want to review the final specs before Monday's installation." Work. Normal, comprehensible problems with logical solutions. I spent 4 hours reviewing security protocols and equipment specifications, losing myself in the familiar rhythms of threat assessment and system design. It was almost enough to forget that my personal life had imploded in spectacular fashion. Almost. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. "Sophie." "Dad, Mom says you and she need to talk to me about something. She sounds weird. Is everything okay?" I closed my eyes. "Where are you, kiddo?" "Madison's house, but Mom wants me to come home. She says it's important." "Okay. I'll meet you there." "Dad, are you and Mom fighting?" "Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes." "We'll talk when I get home, okay? All 3 of us." "Okay. Dad, I love you." "I love you too, Sophie. More than you know." I drove home through streets that seemed different now, like I was seeing them through new eyes. The familiar landmarks, the harbor, the tourist shops, the restaurants where Lyra and I had celebrated anniversaries, felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Lyra's Mercedes was still in the driveway, but now there was a second car, Trent's Porsche. My brother sat on the front steps like he belonged there, checking his phone with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never been denied anything he wanted. He looked up as I parked. "Rowan. Trent. We should talk. Should we?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. He stood, straightening his jacket. Even on a Saturday afternoon, he was dressed like he was heading to a board meeting. This doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't it? Lyra and we didn't plan for this to happen, but it did, and now we need to figure out how to move forward like adults. Adults. I walked past him toward the front door. Is that what you call it? What would you call it? I stopped and looked at my brother. Really looked at him. Trent was 3 years older, 3 inches taller, and had always carried himself like those advantages meant something. Growing up, he'd been the star athlete, the honor student, the golden boy who could do no wrong. I'd been the younger brother who built things with his hands and asked too many questions. I'd call it theft, I said. His composure slipped slightly. That's not fair. Fair, I laughed, the sound harsh in the afternoon air. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you keeping your hands off my wife. Fair would have been Lyra asking for a divorce before she started planning her exit strategy. Fair would have been not finding out that my family was being auctioned off behind my back. Rowan? But you know what? You're right. This doesn't have to be complicated. You want Lyra? You can have her. You want the life I built? Take it. But don't stand on my front steps and lecture me about being an adult. I walked into the house, leaving him standing there. Lyra was in the living room, pacing near the windows that overlooked the harbor. She'd changed into a dress and heels, like this was a business meeting instead of the destruction of a family. "Where's Sophie?" I asked. "On her way. She should be here in 20 minutes. Good, let's get this over with." Trent came in behind me, his presence filling the room like smoke. The three of us stood there in the living room where Sophie had taken her first steps, where we'd opened Christmas presents and celebrated birthdays and pretended to be a family. "How do you want to handle this?" Lyra asked. "Honestly, for once." She flinched at that. "Rowan." No more careful words and strategic conversations. Our daughter is about to learn that her family is broken. The least we can do is tell her the truth. "What truth?" Trent asked. I turned to my brother. "The truth that you've been sleeping with my wife for 8 months. The truth that this was planned and calculated and designed to leave me with as little as possible. The truth that you both think I'm too stupid or too weak to fight back." "That's not," Lyra started. "It's exactly what this is." I walked to the window and looked out at the harbor. "But here's the thing you both forgot. I spent 10 years in the Army Corps of Engineers. I know how to build things, and I know how to tear them down. And I'm very, very good at both." The sound of a car in the driveway cut through the tension. Sophie was home. "Remember," Lyra said quietly. "She's 13. She doesn't need to know everything. She deserves to know enough." Sophie came through the front door with the energy of a teenager who'd spent the day shopping with friends. She was carrying bags from 3 different stores and talking before she was fully inside. "Mom, you should have seen the dress Madison found at—" She stopped when she saw the 3 of us standing in the living room like we were posing for a funeral photo. "What's going on?" "Sit down, kiddo," I said. "We need to talk." She looked between the 3 of us, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Is someone sick?" "No," Lyra said. "Nobody's sick, but your father and we've decided that we need to make some changes." Sophie sat on the edge of the couch, her shopping bags forgotten. "What kind of changes?" I looked at Lyra. giving her a chance to explain. When she didn't speak, I did. Your mother and I are getting divorced, Sophie. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sophie's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, hurt, before settling into something that looked older than her 13 years. Why? She asked. Sometimes adults grow apart, Lyra said. Sometimes people change and want different things. That's not an answer, Sophie said. That's what adults say when they don't want to tell you the real reason. Smart kid, too smart. The real reason, I said, is that your mother and Uncle Trent have decided they want to be together instead. Rowan, Lyra warned. She asked for the truth. Sophie looked at Trent, then at her mother, then back at me. Together how? They're in love, I said. Or think they are. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophie stared at the three adults who'd just blown up her world, her expression cycling through emotions too complex for a 13-year-old to process. So, you're getting married? She asked Lyra. Eventually. Maybe. We haven't discussed. Are you moving out, Dad? I don't know yet. We're still working out the details. What about me? The question that mattered most, asked in a voice that was trying very hard to stay steady. You'll live with your mother, Lyra said, but you'll see your father all the time. This doesn't change how much we both love you. It changes everything, Sophie said quietly. She was right. It changed everything. I know this is hard, Trent said, speaking for the first time since Sophie had arrived. But I want you to know that I care about you very much. I've always thought of you as... Don't. Sophie's voice was sharp. Just don't. She stood up and looked at the three of us with something that might have been discussed. I'm going to my room. Don't follow me. She left her shopping bags on the floor and walked upstairs. A few seconds later, her bedroom door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. That went well, I said. She'll adjust, Lyra said. Kids are resilient. Are they? Rowan, this doesn't have to be a war. We can make this work for everyone. I looked at my wife and my brother, standing together in the living room of the house I'd renovated with my own hands, planning the future they'd stolen from me. You're right, I said. It doesn't have to be a war. They both relaxed slightly. But it's going to be. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of October wind that stripped leaves from trees and sent them skittering across empty streets like small, desperate animals. I woke up in the guest bedroom of my own house, having spent the night listening to Lyra and Trent's muffled voices through the walls as they planned their future in what used to be my bedroom. Sophie hadn't come down for dinner Saturday night. When I'd knocked on her door around 8, she'd told me to go away. I'd left a sandwich outside her room and found it untouched this morning, along with a note written in her careful handwriting. Dad, can we talk? Just us? I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the breakfast bar with a bowl of cereal and red eyes that suggested she'd spent most of the night crying. She was wearing an oversized sweatshirt and pajama pants, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail that made her look younger than 13. Morning, kiddo. Is it? She had my sense of humor, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you looked at it. Where are they? She asked. Your mother's still asleep. Trent went back to Boston last night. Good. She pushed cereal around in her bowl without eating. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you okay? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on how this was affecting Sophie that I hadn't considered she might be worried about me. I'm managing. That's not what I asked. Smart kid, too smart. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. No, kiddo, I'm not okay, but I will be. Are you angry? Yes. At Mom? Yes. At Uncle Trent? Especially at Uncle Trent. She nodded like that made sense. I'm angry too. That's okay. You're allowed to be angry. Mom says anger is destructive, that it doesn't solve anything. Your mother says a lot of things. Some of them are even true. Sophie almost smiled at that. Almost. Dad, are you going to fight them? What do you mean? In court, for custody and money and stuff. Madison's parents got divorced last year, and it was horrible. Her dad tried to prove her mom was crazy, and her mom tried to prove her dad was hiding money, and Madison ended up living with her grandmother for 3 months while they sorted it out. I reached across the breakfast bar and took her hand. Sophie, I promise you this. Whatever happens between your mother and me, you will never be caught in the middle. You will never have to choose sides. You will never be used as a weapon. What if Mom tries to make me choose? Then you tell her what I just told you, and if that doesn't work, you call me. What if you try to make me choose? I won't. Promise? Promise. She squeezed my hand. Okay. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching seagulls wheel over the harbor through the kitchen windows. Normal father-daughter quiet, the kind we'd shared over countless breakfasts when she was younger and the world made more sense. Dad? Yeah? Are you going to let them win? The question was asked quietly, but it hit like a physical blow. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw something I recognized. The stubborn set of her jaw that she'd inherited from me. The way her eyes narrowed when she was thinking through a problem. The quiet intensity that meant she was done being a victim. What do you think I should do? I think you should fight back, but not like Madison's parents, smarter. Smarter how? I don't know. You're the adult, but Uncle Trent always acts like he's better than everyone else. And Mom's been different lately. Mean. Like she thinks she deserves things just because she wants them. Out of the mouths of babes. Sophie, I need you to understand something. What happens between your mother and me? What I do or don't do in response to this situation, none of it is your responsibility. You're 13. Your job is to be 13. Go to school, hang out with friends, worry about algebra tests, and whether Jake Morrison likes you back. Her cheeks reddened. How did you know about Jake Morrison? I'm your father. I know everything. Do you really? No, but I know enough. She finished her cereal and put the bowl in the dishwasher, moving with the careful precision of someone trying to maintain normal routines in an abnormal situation. I'm going to Madison's again today. Her mom said I could stay as long as I want. Running away? Strategic retreat. You taught me the difference. I had taught her that during one of our weekend hiking trips when she was 10 and we'd encountered a black bear on the trail. Sometimes the smart move was to back away slowly and wait for the situation to change. Good strategy. But Sophie? Yeah? This is still your home. No matter what happens, this is still your home. She hugged me then, fierce and quick, before grabbing her overnight bag and heading for the door. Dad? Yeah? Give them hell. After Sophie left, I spent an hour reviewing the financial documents David Chen had emailed me. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment account summaries, a paper trail of my marriage's slow disintegration. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Expensive dinners at restaurants Lyra and I never visited, hotel charges in cities where I'd never traveled with her, purchases that made no sense unless you factored in a second person with expensive tastes. 8 months of deception, documented in black and white. My phone rang at 10 a.m. David Chen. Rowan, I've been going through the financial records. We need to talk. What did you find? Not over the phone. Can you come to the office? David's law office occupied the top floor of a converted mill building overlooking Gloucester Harbor. The space was all exposed brick and original hardwood floors, with windows that provided a panoramic view of the working waterfront. On a normal day, it was impressive. Today, it felt like a war room. David spread documents across his conference table like a general planning a campaign. The good news is that the trust freeze is holding. The bad news is more complicated. How complicated? Your wife has been very busy. Look at this. He handed me a credit card statement. These charges, the restaurants, the hotels, the shopping trips, They total almost $40,000 over the past 8 months. 40,000? And that's just one card. There are 3 others with similar patterns. I studied the statements, recognizing some of the charges now that I knew what I was looking for. The Mandarin Oriental in Boston, Mistral Restaurant, boutiques on Newbury Street that sold dresses costing more than most people's monthly rent. She's been financing an affair with our money. It gets worse. Look at these investment account withdrawals. David showed me a series of transactions that made my stomach clench. 50,000 here, 30,000 there, all withdrawn over the past 6 months and transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. Where did the money go? That's what we need to find out. But Rowan, there's something else. These insurance policy change requests that were submitted Friday afternoon, they weren't just beneficiary modifications. Someone tried to increase the coverage amounts. Significantly. How significantly? Your current life insurance policy is worth $2 million. The requested changes would have increased that to $5 million. The conference room suddenly felt smaller. $5 million. With Lyra as the sole beneficiary. I sat back in my chair, processing the implications. They weren't just planning to leave me. They were planning for me to be worth more gone than alive. I'm not saying that, but the timing is interesting. What do I do? David gathered the documents into neat stacks. First, we file for divorce immediately. No waiting, no negotiations. We cite adultery, financial misconduct, and breach of fiduciary duty. Second, we petition the court to freeze all joint assets pending resolution. Third, we demand a full forensic accounting of every transaction over the past year. How long will that take? Months, maybe longer if they fight it. They'll fight it. Probably. But Rowan, there's something else you should consider. These financial irregularities, the insurance policy changes, the pattern of deception. This goes beyond a simple affair. This looks like fraud. What kind of fraud? The kind that could result in criminal charges if we can prove intent to defraud. The kind that could void any claim Lyra has to community property. I looked out the conference room windows at the harbor, where fishing boats were heading out for the day's work. Normal people doing normal jobs, solving normal problems. I envied them. Do it, I said. All of it? All of it. File the papers, freeze the assets, demand the accounting. And David? Yes? I want a private investigator, the best one you know. Rowan, if this goes to trial, anything obtained through private investigation has to be legally admissible. We can't. I'm not asking you to hire them. I'm asking you to recommend someone. David was quiet for a moment. There's a woman named Sarah Mitchell, former Boston PD, runs her own agency now. She's expensive, but she's good. And more importantly, she's careful. Give me her number. I left David's office with a folder full of financial documents and a phone number for someone who made her living uncovering other people's secrets. The morning fog was burning off, revealing a day that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Instead of going home, I drove to my office. Sunday afternoon was the perfect time to work without interruptions, and I had calls to make that required privacy. Sarah Mitchell answered on the second ring. Her voice was professional, neutral, giving nothing away. Mitchell Investigations. Ms. Mitchell, my name is Rowan Carrick. David Chen gave me your number. What can I do for you, Mr. Carrick? I need to know everything about my wife's activities over the past 8 months. Where she's been, who she's been with, how she's been spending money. Everything. Divorce case? Among other things. My rate is $500 a day plus expenses. I require a $5,000 retainer and a signed contract that specifies exactly what you want investigated. Fine. Mr. Carrick, I should tell you that, in my experience, people who hire private investigators usually discover things they wish they hadn't. Are you sure you want to know everything? I thought about Lyra standing in our bedroom doorway in lingerie I'd never seen. announcing her new arrangement like she was discussing dinner plans. I thought about Trent, sitting on my front steps like he owned them. I thought about Sophie's red eyes and the way she'd asked if I was going to let them win. I'm sure. I'll email you the contract. How soon do you need results? Yesterday. I'll start tomorrow morning. After hanging up with Sarah Mitchell, I made another call. This one to a number I hadn't dialed in 5 years. Voss Consulting. Marcus, it's Rowan Carrick. Marcus Voss had been my sergeant in Afghanistan, a career soldier who'd left the army the same time I did and started his own security consulting firm. We'd worked together on a few projects over the years, but more importantly, Marcus understood the difference between legal investigation and the kind of research that fell into gray areas. Rowan, how the hell are you? I've been better. Marcus, I need a favor. Name it. I need a complete background check on my brother. Financial records, business dealings, personal associations, everything. Your brother? What's going on? He's been sleeping with my wife and trying to steal my assets. I want to know what he's vulnerable to. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Jesus, Rowan. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me. You want the full package? Employment history, credit reports, criminal background, civil litigation? Everything. And Marcus, I need it fast. How fast? End of the week. That's going to cost extra. Bill me. You got it. Rowan? Yeah? Whatever you're planning, be careful. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it can also burn down your own house if you're not careful. Noted. I spent the rest of Sunday afternoon at my office, reviewing security protocols and trying to lose myself in work. But every time I looked at the contracts and specifications spread across my desk, I thought about the financial documents David had shown me. $40,000 in credit card charges, hundreds of thousands in suspicious withdrawals, insurance policies modified without my knowledge, 8 months of planning, 8 months of systematic betrayal while I'd been working 18-hour days to build a future that Lyra and Trent were busy stealing. My phone buzzed with a text from Lyra. We need to discuss the practical arrangements. When will you be home? I typed back, I'll be home when I'm home. Her response came immediately. Don't be childish. Childish. The word sat in my chest like a stone. Childish was throwing a tantrum when you didn't get your way. Childish was breaking things because you were angry. Childish was making emotional decisions based on hurt feelings. What I was planning wasn't childish. It was surgical. I drove home as the sun was setting, painting the harbor in shades of gold and red that would have been romantic under different circumstances. Lyra's Mercedes was in the driveway, along with a car I didn't recognize, a black BMW with Massachusetts plates. I found Lyra in the living room with a woman I'd never seen before. The stranger was tall and thin, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, and the kind of expensive suit that screamed corporate lawyer. Rowan, Lyra said, this is Patricia Hawthorne, my attorney. Patricia Hawthorne stood and extended her hand. Mr. Carrick, I've heard a great deal about you. Have you? Ms. Hawthorne has some proposals for how we can resolve this situation amicably, Lyra said. Does she? Patricia opened a briefcase and removed a folder. Mr. Carrick, I understand this is a difficult time for everyone involved, but with some compromise and good faith on both sides, we can avoid a protracted legal battle that would be expensive and emotionally damaging for your daughter. What kind of compromise? Lyra has prepared a settlement offer that I think you'll find reasonable. She handed me the folder. Inside was a legal document that looked official and binding and completely one-sided. Lyra would retain the house, primary custody of Sophie, and 60% of the liquid assets. I would get the Boston condo, visitation rights, and the remainder of the joint accounts. Reasonable, I said. We think so. And if I don't agree? Patricia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her tone. Then we'll be forced to pursue other remedies. Contested divorces can be very unpleasant, Mr. Carrick. especially when there are allegations of financial misconduct. What kind of allegations? The kind that might arise when one spouse has been making unauthorized withdrawals from joint accounts. The kind that might suggest gambling problems or substance abuse issues. I looked at Lyra. Gambling problems? I'm just saying that people under stress sometimes make poor decisions, she said, and those decisions can look suspicious to a judge. I see. I closed the folder and set it on the coffee table. Ms. Hawthorne, thank you for coming, but I'm afraid I'm not interested in your client's offer. Mr. Carrick. In fact, I think you should leave. Now. Patricia gathered her papers with practiced efficiency. This is a mistake, Mr. Carrick. My client is being generous. That generosity may not last. I'll take my chances. After Patricia left, Lyra and I stood in the living room that had once been the center of our family life. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she said finally. Am I? I'm trying to be fair, Rowan. I'm trying to give you a way out of this that lets you keep your dignity. My dignity. Yes. I walked to the window and looked out at the harbor, where lights were beginning to twinkle on the fishing boats anchored for the night. Lyra, do you know what I did today? I assume you worked. I hired a private investigator and a forensic accountant, and I had my attorney file papers that will freeze every asset we own and require a complete audit of our finances for the past year. She went very still. What? I also discovered some interesting things about our credit card statements, and our investment accounts, and those insurance policy changes you tried to make Friday afternoon. Rowan, 8 months, Lyra. 8 months of planning this while I was working to build our future. 8 months of spending our money on your affair. 8 months of systematic fraud. It's not fraud, isn't it? She walked to the couch and sat down heavily. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Trent and I... It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We tried to fight it. For how long? A whole week? You don't know what it's been like. Living with someone who's never here, who's always working, who treats marriage like another business contract to be managed. So you decided to steal everything I'd worked for and give it to my brother. That's not what happened, isn't it? She looked up at me with something that might have been desperation. Rowan, it doesn't have to be like this. We can still work something out. You're right, we can. What do you want? I sat down across from her, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. I want you to understand something, Lyra. You and Trent made a choice. You chose to betray 20 years of marriage, to humiliate me in front of my own family, to plan my destruction while I was working to support us. You made that choice. Yes. Now I'm making mine. Which is? I stood up and walked toward the stairs. You'll find out. Rowan. I stopped but didn't turn around. I did love you. Once. I know, I said. That's what makes this unforgivable. I went upstairs to the guest bedroom and closed the door. Outside, I could hear Lyra moving around the house, opening and closing drawers, making phone calls in hushed tones, planning her next move. That was fine. I was planning mine too. And unlike Lyra and Trent, I was very good at long-term strategy. Monday morning brought the kind of crisp October weather that made New England postcards, all blue sky and golden leaves dancing in the wind. I woke up in the guest bedroom to the sound of Lyra's Mercedes pulling out of the driveway, probably heading to another strategy session with her attorney. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to Boston. Back tonight. We need to talk. We did need to talk, but not the way she thought. I made coffee and checked my email. David Chen had sent the filed divorce papers, along with a note that the asset freeze was now in effect. Sarah Mitchell had forwarded her standard contract and a request for background information on the subjects to be investigated. Marcus Voss had acknowledged my request for a full background check on Trent and estimated he'd have preliminary results by Wednesday. The machinery of legal warfare was grinding into motion. My phone rang at 8 a.m. Sophie, calling from school. "Dad, I heard Mom on the phone this morning. She sounded really upset." "Are you okay, kiddo?" "I'm fine, but Dad?" "She was talking about lawyers and money and making you pay for something. What's going on?" I closed my eyes. "Sophie, remember what I told you yesterday? About not being caught in the middle?" "Yeah. That still applies. Your mother and I are handling our problems through lawyers now. That's what adults do when they can't agree on things. But you're not going to let her take everything, right?" The question was asked in a small voice that made my chest tight. "Sophie, I promise you this. Whatever happens, you will be taken care of. You will have everything you need. You will never have to worry about money or security or having a place to live. What about you?" "I'll be fine. Promise?" "Promise." After hanging up with Sophie, I drove to my office and spent the morning returning calls from clients and reviewing project timelines. Normal business, the kind of routine that kept my company profitable and my employees paid. But every few minutes, I found myself checking my phone for updates from David or Sarah or Marcus. At 11 a.m., Sarah Mitchell called. "Mr. Carrick, I've started preliminary surveillance on your wife. She's currently at a law office on State Street in Boston, meeting with an attorney named Patricia Hawthorne." I know about Patricia. After the meeting, she drove to the Four Seasons and met your brother in the lobby bar. They're there now. Are you watching them? From a distance. They appear to be having an intense conversation. Your brother looks agitated. Can you hear what they're saying? Not from where I'm positioned. But I can tell you that your wife has made several phone calls since arriving. I have the numbers if you want them. Send them to me. Mr. Carrick, there's something else. Your brother's financial situation may not be as solid as it appears. What do you mean? I've done some preliminary research. His hedge fund has been underperforming for the past 18 months. There are rumors in the financial district about liquidity problems and nervous investors. How bad? Bad enough that he might be looking for alternative sources of capital, like a wealthy brother's assets. After Sarah hung up, I sat in my office staring out at Gloucester Harbor and processing what she'd told me. Trent wasn't just stealing my wife, he was stealing my wife to steal my money. The affair was a means to an end, a way to access the Carrick family wealth that had always been just out of his reach. It was almost funny, in a sick way. Lyra thought she was trading up for a more successful man, not knowing that her new lover was financially desperate. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia Hawthorne. We should meet. Today. There are developments you need to know about." I called David Chen. "Lyra's lawyer wants to meet. Says there are developments." "Don't. Not without me present." "What if she has information I need?" "Then she can share it with both of us. Rowan, these people are not your friends. They're not looking out for your best interests. Every word they say to you is calculated to achieve a specific outcome." "What outcome?" "Getting you to agree to their terms before you discover how badly they've been screwing you." I spent the lunch hour reviewing the financial documents David had compiled, looking for patterns I might have missed. The credit card charges were damning enough, $40,000 spent on an affair, but the investment account withdrawals were more troubling. Large sums moved to accounts I couldn't identify, transferred in amounts just under the reporting thresholds that would have triggered automatic notifications. Whoever had planned this understood financial systems well enough to avoid obvious red flags. That pointed to Trent, with his Harvard MBA and years of managing other people's money. At 2 p.m., Marcus Voss called. "Rowan, I've got preliminary results on your brother. You're not going to like what I found." "Tell me." "Trent's hedge fund is in serious trouble. They've lost 60% of their assets under management in the past year. There are 3 separate SEC investigations into trading irregularities. And get this, he's personally leveraged to the tune of $12 million. $12 million? Houses, cars, boats, art collection. He's been living like he's worth 50 million when his actual net worth is probably negative. How negative? Hard to say without seeing his complete financial picture. But Rowan, there's more. I found records of cash payments to a private investigation firm in Boston, payments that started 9 months ago. He was investigating me? Looks like it. The firm specializes in asset searches and financial intelligence, the kind of work you'd hire if you wanted to know exactly how much someone was worth and where they kept their money. I leaned back in my chair, processing the implications. This was never about love. Doesn't look like it. Looks like your brother identified you as a target, researched your financial situation, and then seduced your wife as a way to access your assets. Can you prove that? I can prove the payments to the investigation firm. The rest is inference, but it's pretty damning inference. After Marcus hung up, I sat alone in my office as the afternoon light faded over the harbor. The pieces were coming together now, forming a picture that was both clearer and uglier than I'd imagined. Trent hadn't fallen in love with my wife. He'd targeted her as part of a calculated plan to solve his financial problems. Lyra, flattered by the attention of a successful, sophisticated man, had been played like a violin. She thought she was trading up. She was actually being used. The question was, what to do with this information. My phone rang. David Chen. Rowan, we have a problem. Lyra's attorney filed a motion this afternoon claiming that you've been hiding assets and demanding immediate access to all financial records. What kind of assets? Offshore accounts, cryptocurrency holdings, undisclosed business interests. They're claiming you've been systematically moving money out of joint accounts to prevent her from accessing her fair share in the divorce. That's ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous. But it's also smart. They're trying to flip the narrative, make you look like the one who's been engaging in financial misconduct. Can they do that? They can try. The judge will order a full financial disclosure from both parties. The good news is that will expose their irregularities as well as any alleged irregularities on your part. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. And Rowan, there's something else. They're also requesting emergency spousal support and temporary custody modifications. What kind of modifications? They want to restrict your access to Sophie pending resolution of the financial issues. They're claiming you might try to take her out of state to avoid the custody proceedings. The conference room walls seem to close in around me. They want to take Sophie away. Temporarily. But yes. Can they do that? If they can convince a judge you're a flight risk or that you're hiding assets, they might be able to get a temporary restraining order. When is the hearing? Thursday morning. 3 days. I had 3 days to prepare a defense against charges I'd never seen coming, filed by people who'd been systematically defrauding me for months. David, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to file a counter motion. Demand an immediate forensic audit of all financial transactions for the past year. Subpoena the records for those credit cards and investment accounts. And I want Trent's financial records included in the discovery. Trent's not a party to the divorce. He is if he's been the recipient of marital assets. If Lyra's been using our money to support him, that makes him a party. That's aggressive. Good. Rowan? If we go this route, there's no going back. This becomes total war. I thought about Sophie asking if I was going to let them win. I thought about 20 years of marriage reduced to a legal document that left me with a Boston condo and visitation rights. I thought about Trent sitting on my front steps like he owned them. Then we go to war. I left David's office and drove home through streets that looked different in the fading light. The familiar landmarks of my life, the harbor, the shops, the restaurants where Lyra and I had celebrated anniversaries, felt like artifacts from someone else's existence. The house was dark when I arrived, Lyra's Mercedes absent from the driveway. I let myself in and found a note on the kitchen counter. Staying in Boston tonight. Sophie is at Madison's again. We need to discuss the custody arrangements. Custody arrangements. Like Sophie was a piece of property to be divided up in the settlement. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my study, surrounded by the books and photographs and mementos of a life that was being systematically dismantled. The silence was complete, except for the grandfather clock in the corner, marking time with mechanical precision. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Dad, Mom wants me to come to Boston this weekend. She says we need to talk about where I'm going to live. I don't want to go." I called her immediately. "Hey, kiddo. Dad, I don't want to live in Boston. I don't want to leave my school or my friends or my room. Why is Mom trying to make me choose?" "Sophie, listen to me. You are not going to be forced to choose anything. You are not going to be taken away from your home or your school or your friends." "But Mom says—" "I don't care what your mother says. I'm your father, and I'm telling you that you're going to be okay." "How do you know?" "Because I'm going to make sure of it." "Promise?" "Promise." After hanging up with Sophie, I sat in the growing darkness and made a decision. Lyra and Trent had started this war with careful planning and strategic advantage. They'd been preparing for months while I'd been working and trusting and believing in things that turned out to be illusions. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed I would roll over and accept defeat. They'd assumed I was too decent, too civilized, too concerned with appearances to fight back with everything I had. They were wrong. I opened my laptop and began typing emails. To Sarah Mitchell, authorizing expanded surveillance and investigation. To Marcus Voss, requesting expedited results on Trent's background check. To David Chen, confirming my decision to pursue aggressive legal action. Then I made one more call, to a number I'd hoped I'd never have to use. Blackstone Investigations. "This is Rowan Carrick. I need to speak with Janet Blackstone." "Hold, please." Janet Blackstone had been a federal prosecutor before starting her own investigation firm. She specialized in financial crimes and had a reputation for finding evidence that other investigators missed. She was expensive, ruthless, and exactly what I needed. "Mr. Carrick, I've been expecting your call." "Have you?" "David Chen mentioned you might need my services. I've already done some preliminary research on your situation." "And?" "And you're being played by professionals. Your wife and brother have been planning this for almost a year, not 8 months. The financial irregularities go back much further than you think." "How much further?" "I'll have a complete report for you by Wednesday. But Mr. Carrick, you should know that what they've done may constitute criminal fraud. The question is whether you want to pursue criminal charges or just use the evidence to destroy them in civil court." "What's the difference?" "Criminal charges mean prison time. Civil court means they lose everything but stay out of jail." I looked around my study at the photographs of Sophie and the books I'd collected over 20 years and the life I'd built with my own hands. "I'll let you know." "Mr. Carrick?" "Yes?" "Whatever you decide, decide quickly. They're moving fast now. If you're going to stop them, you need to act before they can consolidate their position." After Janet hung up, I sat alone in the darkness and planned my next move. Lyra and Trent thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They thought they understood the rules of the game they'd started. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of bitter wind that turned October leaves into projectiles and made the harbor look gray and unwelcoming. I woke up in the guest bedroom to find 3 missed calls from David Chen and a text message that made my stomach clench. "Emergency hearing moved to this afternoon. Judge wants to see all parties at 2 p.m. Call me immediately." I found David at his office by 7 a.m., surrounded by documents and looking like he'd been there all night. "What's the emergency?" I asked. "Lyra's attorney filed an amended motion yesterday evening. They're now claiming you threatened your wife and demanding an immediate restraining order." "What kind of threat?" "According to their filing, you told Lyra that you would destroy her and make her pay for the affair. They're painting you as potentially violent and unstable." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Did you say those things?" I thought back to Sunday night, to the conversation in the living room when I'd told Lyra she would find out what my choice was. I told her she'd made her choice, and now I was making mine. What else? That I was going to fight back, that I wouldn't just roll over and accept their terms. David rubbed his temples. They're twisting your words to make you sound threatening. Combined with their claims about hidden assets and flight risk, they might be able to get a temporary restraining order that keeps you away from both Lyra and Sophie. They can't take Sophie away from me. They can, if they convince a judge you're dangerous. I sat down heavily in one of David's client chairs. How do we fight this? With the truth. Janet Blackstone sent her preliminary report this morning. It's devastating. David handed me a folder thick with financial documents, photographs, and what looked like surveillance reports. Janet found evidence of systematic fraud going back 18 months, he said. Your wife and brother have been siphoning money from your accounts, using forged documents to authorize transfers, and creating false paper trails to cover their tracks. I opened the folder and found myself looking at bank statements I'd never seen, showing transfers I'd never authorized to accounts I'd never opened. How much? Over $600,000. The number hit like a physical blow. 600,000? That's just what Janet could trace in 3 days. There's probably more. I flipped through the documents, seeing my forged signature on transfer authorizations, my name on accounts I'd never opened, my personal information used to secure loans I'd never requested. This is identity theft. Among other things, Janet also found evidence that Trent has been using the stolen money to pay down his personal debts. The SEC investigation into his hedge fund is more serious than we thought. He's facing potential criminal charges for misappropriating client funds. So he decided to misappropriate my funds instead. Looks like it. I found photographs in the folder showing Lyra and Trent at banks I'd never visited, signing documents at law offices I'd never heard of, meeting with financial advisors who weren't working for me. How long have you known about this? I asked. Janet sent the report at 6 this morning. I've been reviewing it since then. This changes everything. Yes, it does. We can file criminal charges against both of them. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud. They're looking at serious prison time. I closed the folder and looked at David. What about Sophie? If we can prove her mother is a criminal, custody becomes much less complicated. But if we file criminal charges, Sophie watches her mother get arrested. Yes. I stood up and walked to David's windows, looking out at the harbor where fishing boats were heading out for the day's work. Normal people doing honest work, solving problems that didn't require destroying families. There's another option, David said quietly. Which is? We use this evidence to destroy their civil case without filing criminal charges. We present it at the hearing this afternoon and watch their attorney run for the exits. What happens to them? They lose everything. The divorce settlement, their credibility, any claim to your assets. Lyra ends up with nothing, and Trent's financial crimes get exposed without us having to prosecute them. And Sophie? Sophie keeps her mother out of prison, but her mother loses any ability to take her away from you. My phone rang. Sarah Mitchell. Mr. Carrick, you need to know that your wife and brother met with a moving company this morning. They're planning to relocate to California. When? The moving truck is scheduled for Friday. They're planning to take your daughter with them. Can they do that legally? Not without a court order. But if they leave the state with her, getting her back becomes much more complicated. After Sarah hung up, I looked at David. They're planning to run. With Sophie? With Sophie. David was quiet for a moment. That changes the timeline. If we're going to stop them, we have to do it today. At the hearing? At the hearing. I thought about Sophie, probably sitting in class right now, unaware that her mother was planning to kidnap her to California. I thought about the past week, the lies and betrayals and systematic destruction of everything I'd built. Do it, I said. Criminal charges? All of it. Every charge Janet can make stick. Rowan, once we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be destroying your daughter's mother. Her mother destroyed herself. I'm just documenting it. The courthouse in Salem looked like something from a Gothic novel, all stone towers and arched windows that seemed designed to intimidate. I met David in the lobby at 1:30, both of us carrying boxes of evidence that would either vindicate me or destroy what was left of my family. Lyra was already there with Patricia Hawthorne, looking composed and professional in a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She avoided eye contact when I walked past, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Trent wasn't there, which was interesting. Either he was confident enough in the outcome to skip the hearing, or smart enough to avoid being in the same room when the evidence was presented. Judge Margaret Kellerman was a stern woman in her 60s who'd been handling family court cases for 20 years. She had the look of someone who'd seen every possible variation of human stupidity and wasn't impressed by any of it. This is an emergency hearing regarding the motion for temporary restraining order and custody modification in the matter of Carrick versus Carrick, she said. Ms. Hawthorne, you filed the motion. Present your case. Patricia stood and launched into a carefully prepared presentation about my alleged threats, my supposed flight risk, and my purported efforts to hide assets. She painted a picture of a dangerous, unstable man who couldn't be trusted with his own daughter. It was a masterful performance, full of legal precedents and emotional appeals. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed it myself. When Patricia finished, Judge Kellerman looked at David. Mr. Chen, your response? David stood and opened his first box of evidence. Your Honor, the petitioner's motion is based on fabricated claims designed to distract from systematic criminal fraud perpetrated by Mrs. Carrick and her accomplice, Trent Ardell. That's a serious accusation, Counselor. Yes, Your Honor, and I have serious evidence to support it. For the next hour, David methodically presented Janet Blackstone's findings. Bank records showing forged signatures, transfer authorizations I'd never signed, accounts opened in my name without my knowledge, $600,000 stolen through identity theft and wire fraud. Patricia tried to object, to claim the evidence was irrelevant to the custody issue, but Judge Kellerman overruled her every time. The credibility of the petitioner is absolutely relevant to this court's determination, the judge said. When David finished presenting the financial evidence, he moved to the surveillance reports. Your Honor, Mrs. Carrick has also made false statements to this court about her living arrangements and future plans. He presented photographs of Lyra and Trent meeting with moving companies, real estate agents in California, and school administrators in Los Angeles. Mrs. Carrick has been planning to relocate to California with the minor child, without notice to the court or to Mr. Carrick. This constitutes attempted parental kidnapping under Massachusetts law. Judge Kellerman looked at Lyra with an expression that could have frozen the harbor. Mrs. Carrick, do you have an explanation for this evidence? Lyra stood slowly, her composure finally cracking. Your Honor, we were exploring options. Nothing was finalized. You hired a moving company to explore options? I thought it might be better for Sophie to have a fresh start. Without her father? Lyra didn't answer. Judge Kellerman reviewed the documents for what felt like hours while the courtroom sat in absolute silence. Finally, she looked up. Ms. Hawthorne, your motion for restraining order is denied. The evidence suggests that your client, not Mr. Carrick, poses a risk to the minor child. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting Mr. Carrick temporary sole custody of the minor child, pending a full investigation of the financial irregularities detailed in these documents. Patricia went pale. Your Honor, surely, Mrs. Carrick, you are ordered to surrender your passport and remain in Massachusetts pending resolution of these proceedings. Any attempt to leave the state with the minor child will result in your immediate arrest. Judge Kellerman gathered her papers. Mr. Chen, I assume you'll be filing criminal referrals based on this evidence? Yes, Your Honor. Good. This court has no tolerance for fraud or attempted kidnapping. We're adjourned. I walked out of the courthouse in a daze, carrying boxes of evidence that had just destroyed my wife and saved my daughter. David was already on his phone, probably calling Janet Blackstone to coordinate with the district attorney's office. Lyra was standing on the courthouse steps, looking lost and defeated. Patricia was nowhere to be seen, probably already planning how to withdraw from the case without getting sanctioned for filing frivolous motions. "Rowan?" Lyra said as I walked past. I stopped but didn't turn around. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Yes, you did." "Sophie doesn't deserve this." "No, she doesn't. She deserved parents who put her welfare above their own selfishness. She deserved a mother who didn't try to steal her father's money and kidnap her to California." "I wasn't going to kidnap her. I was going to give her a better life." I turned around and looked at my wife, my ex-wife, standing on the courthouse steps in her expensive suit, still trying to justify the unjustifiable. "Lyra, in about an hour, the FBI is going to arrest you for wire fraud and identity theft. You're going to be booked, fingerprinted, and held pending bail. Your picture is going to be in the newspaper, and everyone in Gloucester is going to know exactly what you did." Her face went white. "The FBI?" "Janet Blackstone used to be a federal prosecutor. She knows which buttons to push." "Rowan, please. We can work something out. I'll give back the money. I'll sign whatever papers you want. I'll disappear if that's what you need. Just don't do this to Sophie." "I'm not doing anything to Sophie. You did this to Sophie when you decided to steal her college fund to finance your affair." "Her college fund?" "The education trust. You cleaned it out 3 months ago." Lyra sat down heavily on the courthouse steps. "I was going to put it back." "With what money? Trent's broke. His hedge fund is under investigation. He's personally leveraged for $12 million, and he's about to be indicted for misappropriating client funds." "That's not—" "He said—" "He lied, Lyra. About his finances, about his feelings, about everything. You weren't trading up for a better man. You were being used by a desperate one." I left her sitting on the courthouse steps and drove to Sophie's school. She was in her last period class, probably thinking about homework and weekend plans and all the normal concerns of a 13-year-old whose world was about to change again. I signed her out early and found her waiting in the main office, looking concerned. "Dad? What's wrong? Why are you here?" "We need to talk, kiddo. Let's go home." We drove through Gloucester in silence, past the harbor and the shops and the restaurants where Lyra and I had pretended to be happy. Sophie stared out the window, probably sensing that something significant had happened, but not sure what. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Is Mom in trouble?" "Yes." "Bad trouble?" "Yes." "Because of the money stuff?" "Smart kid. Too smart. Because of a lot of things." We pulled into our driveway and Sophie looked at the house like she was seeing it for the first time. "Are we going to lose the house?" "No." "Are you going to lose me?" I turned off the engine and looked at my daughter. "Sophie, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are never going to lose me. I am never going to lose you. Whatever happens with your mother, whatever happens in court, whatever happens with lawyers and judges and all the adult nonsense that's been going on, you and I are going to be okay. Promise?" "Promise." We went inside, and I made Sophie a snack while she did her homework at the kitchen table. Normal father-daughter routine, the kind we'd shared hundreds of times when the world made sense. At 5:30, my phone rang. David Chen. "It's done. The FBI arrested Lyra at her hotel. Trent was arrested at his office in Boston. They're both being held pending bail hearings." I looked at Sophie, bent over her algebra homework, completely absorbed in solving problems that had clear answers. "What happens now?" "Now we wait. The criminal case will take months to resolve. The divorce will be finalized as soon as the paperwork clears, and you get to figure out how to explain to your daughter that her mother is going to prison. How long? Wire fraud and identity theft? If they're convicted on all counts, probably 5 to 7 years. I hung up and watched Sophie work through her math problems, using logic and careful calculation to find the right answers. Outside, the sun was setting over Gloucester Harbor, painting the water in shades of gold and red that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Dad? Yeah, kiddo? Whatever happened today, we're going to be okay, right? We're going to be okay. Good. She erased an answer and tried a different approach to the problem. Because I like it here. I like our house and my school and my friends. I don't want things to change. Some things are going to change, Sophie, but the important things, you and me, this house, your school, those things are going to stay the same. Promise? Promise. She went back to her homework, and I started making dinner. Normal evening routine, the kind we'd shared when we were a family of 3 instead of a family of 2. But as I watched my daughter work through her problems with patience and determination, I realized something important. We were still a family. Smaller than before, damaged by betrayal and lies, but still a family. And that was enough. The FBI arrests made the front page of the Gloucester Times on Thursday morning, complete with photographs of Lyra and Trent being led away in handcuffs. The headline read, "Local couple charged in $600,000 fraud scheme." By noon, the story had been picked up by Boston television stations and was trending on local social media. I found out about the media coverage when my phone started ringing at 6 a.m. with calls from reporters, neighbors, and clients who'd seen the news. I turned off the phone and made breakfast for Sophie, who was getting ready for school with the determined normalcy of a teenager trying to pretend her world wasn't falling apart. "Everyone's going to know," she said over her cereal. "Yes." "Everyone's going to stare at me and whisper and ask questions." "Probably." She pushed cereal around in her bowl without eating. "What do I tell them?" "Tell them it's a private family matter and you don't want to discuss it." "What if they keep asking?" "Then you walk away, and if anyone gives you a hard time, you call me immediately." "What if they're mean about Mom?" I sat down across from her, recognizing the loyalty that made her ask the question even after everything Lyra had done. "Sophie, your mother made some very bad choices, but she's still your mother, and you're allowed to love her even when you're angry at her." "Are you angry at her?" "Yes." "Are you angry at me for still loving her?" "No, kiddo, never." She finished getting ready for school with the careful precision of someone preparing for battle. I drove her to the front entrance and watched her walk through the doors with her head high and her shoulders straight. Tough kid. Tougher than she should have to be at 13. I spent the morning at my office trying to focus on normal business while fielding calls from David Chen about the criminal proceedings and Janet Blackstone about additional evidence she'd uncovered. The fraud was even more extensive than we'd initially thought. Lyra and Trent had been systematically looting my accounts for almost 2 years, taking just enough at a time to avoid triggering automatic alerts. At 11 a.m., Sarah Mitchell called with an update that made my stomach clench. "Mr. Carrick, Lyra made bail this morning. She's out." "How much was bail?" $500,000. Her sister posted it." "Where is she now?" "Driving toward Gloucester. She should arrive at your house within the hour." I called David immediately. "She can't come to the house," I said. "The judge gave me temporary custody." "The custody order doesn't prevent her from visiting. It just prevents her from taking Sophie out of state." "What if she tries to take Sophie anyway?" "Then you call the police. But Rowan, she's probably just coming to see her daughter. Try to keep it civil." Civil. The word tasted bitter after everything that had happened. I left the office and drove home, arriving just as Lyra's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. She sat in the car for a long moment before getting out, moving like someone who'd aged years in the past few days. She looked terrible. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept. The confident, calculating woman who'd announced her affair 5 days ago had been replaced by someone broken and desperate. "Rowan," she said as I got out of my truck. "Lyra." "Is Sophie home?" "She's at school. I need to see her." "I know." We stood in the driveway of the house we'd shared for 15 years, surrounded by the gardens Lyra had planted and the trees I'd pruned, like strangers meeting for the first time. "Can we go inside?" she asked. "I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I just want to talk." Against my better judgment, I unlocked the front door and let her into the house that was no longer hers. She walked through the rooms like she was visiting a museum, touching familiar objects with the reverence of someone saying goodbye. "How much of it did you mean?" I asked. "What?" "The marriage, the family, the life we built together. How much of it was real?" She sat down on the living room couch, where we'd watched movies and helped Sophie with homework, and pretended to be happy. All of it was real. Until it wasn't. When did it stop being real? "I don't know. Gradually, I think. You were working all the time, traveling constantly. I felt like I was living alone even when you were home. So you decided to steal my money and run away with my brother. It wasn't supposed to happen like that." "How was it supposed to happen?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "Trent said you'd never fight back. He said you'd accept a reasonable settlement and we could all move on with our lives." Trent was wrong. Yes, he was wrong about a lot of things. I sat down across from her, close enough to see the exhaustion in her eyes. "Did you know about his financial problems?" "Not at first. He told me he was successful, that his fund was doing well. I believed him." "When did you find out the truth?" "Last month, when he asked me to help him access the trust funds." "And you did it anyway?" "I was already in too deep. We'd already taken so much money, made so many plans. I thought if we could just get enough to pay off his debts, we could start over somewhere else." "With my daughter. With our daughter." "No. She stopped being your daughter when you decided to steal her college fund." Lyra flinched like I'd slapped her. "I was going to pay it back." "With what money?" Trent said. Trent lied. About everything. His success, his feelings, his plans for the future. You were just a tool he used to access my assets." She started crying then, quiet tears that spoke of genuine remorse or excellent acting. After 20 years of marriage, I couldn't tell the difference anymore. "I know you hate me," she said. "I don't hate you, Lyra. I pity you." "That's worse." "Yes, it is." We sat in silence while the grandfather clock in the corner marked time with mechanical precision. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of suburban life, lawn mowers and car doors and children playing, that seemed impossibly distant now. "What's going to happen to me?" she asked. "You're going to prison. Probably for 5 to 7 years. And Sophie?" "Sophie is going to live with me and try to have as normal a life as possible under the circumstances." "Will you let her visit me?" "If she wants to." "Will you tell her I love her?" "I'll tell her you said that." "Rowan, don't. Don't try to make this about love or family or anything noble. You made a choice. You chose money over marriage, selfishness over family, Trent over Sophie and me. Own that choice." She cried harder then, the kind of sobbing that comes from genuine grief or genuine self-pity. I couldn't tell which, and I realized I didn't care. At 3:15, I heard Sophie's key in the front door. She came into the living room and stopped when she saw her mother on the couch. "Mom?" "Hi, baby." Sophie looked between us, her expression cycling through confusion, hope, and something that might have been disappointment. "Are you coming home?" "No, sweetheart, I can't come home." "Because of the money thing?" "Because of a lot of things." Sophie sat down next to her mother, close enough to touch, but not touching. Are you going to jail? Probably. For how long? I don't know yet. Will I be able to see you? I hope so. They talked for an hour while I sat in my study and pretended to work. I could hear their voices through the walls, Lyra's explanations and apologies, Sophie's questions and accusations, the slow, painful process of a daughter learning that her mother was human and flawed and capable of terrible choices. At 4:30, Lyra knocked on my study door. I should go, she said. Probably. Rowan, I know you don't owe me anything, but please don't turn Sophie against me. I won't have to. She's smart enough to figure out the truth on her own. The truth according to you. The truth according to the FBI. She flinched again. Right. I walked her to the front door, where she paused and looked back at the house one last time. I did love you, she said. Both of you. That was real. I know. That's what makes this unforgivable. She got in her Mercedes and drove away, probably back to her sister's house or a hotel or wherever people go when they've destroyed their own lives. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner and realized I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret, just emptiness where 20 years of marriage used to be. Sophie was in her room when I went upstairs, lying on her bed and staring at the ceiling. You okay, kiddo? She's really going to prison. Yes. And it's really over. The family, I mean. The old family is over. But we're still a family. You and me. Is that enough? I sat on the edge of her bed, looking at my daughter who was growing up too fast and learning too much about the world's capacity for betrayal. It's enough for me. Is it enough for you? I think so. Good. Dad? Yeah? I'm glad you fought back. I'm glad you didn't let them win. Even though it means your mother is going to prison? Even though. That evening, I made dinner while Sophie did her homework at the kitchen table. Normal routine, the kind we'd shared when we were a family of 3. But now it felt different, not broken, but reformed. Smaller, but stronger. At 8 p.m., my phone rang. David Chen. Rowan, I have news. Trent's attorney contacted me this afternoon. He wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Full confession, complete restitution, cooperation with the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence. What about Lyra? Her attorney is talking about a similar arrangement. How much restitution? Everything they took, plus interest and penalties. Probably close to $800,000 total. I looked at Sophie, bent over her algebra homework, solving problems with patience and logic. And if they don't make a deal? Then they go to trial and probably get the maximum sentence. How long do they have to decide? The prosecution wants an answer by Monday. Let me think about it. Rowan, there's something else. The story is getting picked up by national media. Financial fraud involving wealthy families sells papers. You and Sophie need to be prepared for more attention. After David hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and watched my daughter work through her homework. She was solving for X, using careful calculation and logical steps to find the right answer. Sophie? Yeah? How would you feel if your mother's sentence was shorter? If she got out of prison sooner? She looked up from her math. How much sooner? Maybe 3 years instead of 7. What would she have to do? Admit what she did, give back all the money, help the FBI understand how the fraud worked. Sophie was quiet for a moment, thinking it through with the same careful logic she applied to algebra problems. Would she really give back all the money? All of it. Even my college fund? Even your college fund. Then I think she should do it. Even though it means she gets a lighter sentence? Dad, she's still my mom. I don't want her to spend the rest of my childhood in prison. But I also don't want her to get away with what she did. Smart kid. Smarter than her parents, apparently. Okay. I'll talk to David tomorrow. Dad? Yeah? Are we going to be okay? Really okay? I looked around the kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals, at the homework spread across the table, at my daughter who was learning to solve complex problems with patience and determination. We're going to be better than okay, kiddo. We're going to be happy. Promise? Promise. She went back to her homework, and I started planning our future. A future without lies or betrayal, or people who confused love with possession. A future built on trust and honesty and the unshakable bond between a father and daughter who'd survived the worst thing that could happen to a family and come out stronger on the other side. Outside, the sun was setting over Gloucester Harbor, painting the water in shades of gold and red that looked beautiful for the first time in a week. The fishing boats were coming home, their holds full of the day's catch, their crews tired but satisfied with honest work. Normal life. The kind Sophie and I were going to build together, one day at a time, and that was enough.